Okay, I remember standing in the lunch line at school in Virginia, and this guy asking me where I was from, and I said, I'm from Atlantic City. And he was like, Atlantic City? I didn't know people lived there. I was like, of course they live there. So I had to explain to him that the casinos are mainly on the boardwalk and off on the marina, and that there are houses and schools and shops and everything just like any other city. The only difference is that we have maybe, 1.2 million people here at any given time, and only, 30,000 or so live here.
I had the most incredible childhood growing up here. The entire boardwalk was my backyard. It was like a carnival that operated all year long. In the summertime, of course, was the height of the carnival season. You could walk from one end of the boardwalk to the other, and you would see such sights as the lady with the hair that went down to her ankles, who was selling pomade on the boardwalk.
And it was the place to be. It was just exciting.
And you didn't have to go to the circus.
You didn't have all, you could watch people. I still watch people. I go to the circus every day.
A circus all our life.
Yeah.
Or I could go into the auction galleries and watch them give away some fabulous diamond ring for practically nothing, or so you thought. I could go and watch strawberry Belgian pancakes being made.
We also had the advantage of being in a very short distance of all of the amusements and the entertainment. Things like Steel Pier, $1 Million Pier, Steeplechase Pier.
He had a guy with an animal show, and every year around August, he'd start to close down, and he'd throw all of the iguanas and the snakes in the ocean, and the people would come running, screaming out of the water about the snakes and the iguanas, But that was a common thing right there, $1 Million Pier.
You could watch 2 or 3 movies, see a vaudeville show, hear a big band sound, maybe a popular rock group of the day. I can remember seeing the Rolling Stones on their first tour to the United States come on to Steel Pier.
And then you could go into the ballroom where they always had name bands and played there for dancing out over the very far end of the Steel Pier, where the diving horses and the diving bell that would take you down below sea level.
You never really could see the fish there, but you kind of thought there were fish down there. And it was just a glorious fantasy world.
2 or 3 weeks ago, we went to WHYY with my boyfriend and I, and it was the first time I had ever been. And I was telling him, this is just like Atlantic City used to be when I was like 6 or 7, with all the piers and rides and games and so many things to do for young kids.
In the 50s, when I was in high school, I wanted very much to ride the high diving horse. And I came home and announced to my mother, they need someone 5 foot tall who can swim to ride the high diving horse. And my mother practically fainted, and my father in his wisdom said, fine, let's go down to the pier, and I'd like to see you jump from the high diving horse board without the horse. Just go up 20, 30 feet and just jump into the pool. And I went up there, and I couldn't even jump without the horse. So in his infinite wisdom, he cured me of my desire to ride the high diving horse, but I always loved the high diving horse.
I lived on Georgia Avenue, and the excursion trains used to come right up to the boardwalk.
Yeah.
And thousands of people would be there. And it used to cost $1 to come down from Philadelphia to Atlantic City and back at that time.
What was the most famous train in Atlantic City?
The Boardwalk Flyer.
No. And what else?
Blue Comet.
The Blue Comet. That's right. When I was a kid, that's all I ever heard.
The Blue Comet was a New York train.
That's
come
right.
down from New York.
That's right. My father had an old Chevrolet car. We called it the Blue Comet.
This is not quite like what Newport was or the Hamptons were. Atlantic City was a place that I think a lot of people remember as having been a very elegant place where the very wealthy kind of hobnobbed. Some of that is true, but it never had quite the snob appeal of any of the other resorts that I had mentioned. But more than that, the Philadelphia excursionist became the real backbone to the city.
was very common in Atlantic City in the summertime to either rent out the top of your house and go live in the basement, or rent out your house and go live someplace else, because it was a seasonal town. That was a chance to make extra income.
And I remember Mom would get, I think, $3 or $4 a night per person, 2 in a bed. And I remember you had the mattress on the spring. And we owned more beds than you can imagine.
It goes so way back that I remember when our family would come, there were rooming houses on Missouri Avenue, Mississippi Avenue, and it was quite a vacation. You were given a shelf and a refrigerator and allowed to eat in the formal dining room, which had little checkered tablecloths with a little, I remember a little vase with some dried flowers in it, and you were allowed to eat like from 6 to 7, and you were only allowed to have one shelf in the refrigerator, and that was stocked on our side with American cheese and salami, which was our family business.
You multiplied our house by 3,000, you had that many homes in Atlantic City having people stay overnight, plus every side avenue had a hotel that could hold 100 or so guests, and the town was just jammed.
Hi there, how much would it be to go for a little ride here?
Well, from here, just $5.
$5? Mm-hmm. Well, that sounds pretty good.
The boardwalk was a very different place. To go up on a rainy day in the summer, sure, you could go up in shorts and a t-shirt. But if you went up on a Sunday afternoon with your parents, you would wear, even at age 8, a jacket and tie. Your sister would have a skirt with ruffles, and you would wear your Sunday best. It was a respected place, and that's the way everybody dressed, not just the local, but the people who came here as tourists and that. It was a very nice place to go in those days.
It was really a refined atmosphere. It has changed so considerably now that it's worthwhile reminiscing of what it used to be.
Well, I lived here for 9 years. What's your name?
But you're supposed to be...
I go to the boardwalk in Atlantic City. I like Ocean One. I like the 99-cent stores on the boardwalk. They have all these 99-cent stores. It has the Ocean One and sneaker stores and casinos.
Come and ride the 21st century extension of the boardwalk to the Sands and the Clary.
Did Ruth Smith recognize the voice of her dancing partner years later when he began recording as Frankie Lane?
All the entertainers that you could imagine would appear here somewhere in Atlantic City. We were just accustomed to it. Other people who lived in other parts of the country, they were never exposed to these people, but these people came here every year to all the nightclubs.
Every club in the city, which we had many at that time, would close up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and by 6, all of their patrons, the people that worked in the club, the different bands, from the Steel Pier, Louis Armstrong, the Duke Ellington bands, everybody would come to the breakfast show at the Club Harlem. They knew that was it, that was the thing to do on a Sunday morning. And cars couldn't get through this street. By 12 o'clock, when the breakfast show would be over, there would be so many people in the street, a car couldn't come through here. This was Happiness Avenue, Kentucky Avenue and the curb, they called it. And everybody came to the Club Harlem, and from the Club Harlem, when the shows were let out, across the street to Jerry's Barbecue. Everybody knew this street, and those are the things they knew about.
Those were the days. I mean, we used to stand in line with, the nightclubs. It was exciting.
This was quite a street. I'm sorry that no matter how much you tell them about it, there's nothing like seeing it for yourself, and you'll never see it again.
Growing up in Atlantic City was like growing up in Disney World.
That's right.
It was it was a 24-hour party for 4 months of the year. And then you got so hooked into that 4 months of the year, you know, or 3 months of the year. I mean, in November you got depressed, and then after Christmas it was just the doldrums until April, and then it just started to warm up, and then everyone started to get excited again. Then you had a great summer, and then
we've all seen when the camp, you know, the kids go to camp, and that day when they all go home and they start giving one another addresses and keep in touch, and we'll see you next year, and it's so depressing. Well, that's exactly what Atlantic City was like, especially at the Strand on Labor Day when we had the business. I actually used to sit there and cry. I was never so depressed and lonely.
And a lot of people had a misconception about Atlantic City, particularly the young girls that would come from Pennsylvania, Scranton area, Wilkesboro. They'd think that this was this way all year round. I used to say, come down 2 weeks after Miss America pageant. Come down and stay at Mom and Pop's place and see what Atlantic City's like. And they'd come down, their chin would drop because the bubble would burst. And we'd just have our little town back, and we'd enjoy it. And all the crazies would go, and we'd enjoy going to school and enjoy our town. But the bubble burst. It doesn't burst anymore. We have a crowded boardwalk all the time now. And all the crazies are here year-round. They're just a lot older, because this is really a senior citizen town. It seems to be now.
I was just saying to my husband, I don't think I'd mind living here because I like to walk and I like to be outside, and it's a safe area on the boardwalks, and it's a nice place to walk.
When we grew up as children, from my house to the church were these frame houses where all these people lived. Mrs. Brown lived at 115, that was her family. Mrs. Hamilton, 124, was her family. And we just looked, it just seems as though we just owned New York Avenue. And we were always out there playing in a friendly way. The parents were friendly, the children were friendly. Everybody had a delightful time. But at 7 o'clock, you'd hear Mrs. Brown come out, call her children in. My father would knock on the window and beckon for me to get my two brothers in, because I was already come. He would say, call your two brothers. And I would go out and say, Monsieur and brother.
You had a lot of parents, not just the ones who lived at your house. Your neighbors were just as much responsible for you as your own mother and father. They wanted to know how you were doing in school. They wanted to know who was that young man I saw you with standing on the porch.
As a boy, we often felt that we had the run of the island. The island's only about 10 miles long. We biked everywhere from one end to the other, from Longport up and down the boardwalk of Atlantic City to the inlet area of Captain Starnes. We were free to roam day or night wherever we wanted to go, and it was always a very peaceful, enjoyable place to be.
Growing up in Atlantic City, Atlantic Avenue was really a major dividing line between the black and white community. The north side was where a majority of blacks lived, and it was very unusual to hear a black person living on the south side of Atlantic City. Working in Atlantic City, there were several jobs that you could do. Primarily was working in the Down Beach communities, which was a mother's helper, a babysitter, and cleaning the houses there.
In junior high, you could make a buck on one of the piers or in one of the hotels, in the kitchen, serving a meal. I was a busboy. I worked on Steeplechase Pier.
When I became a lifeguard, Chickamauga Beach or Missouri Avenue was the place for black and white lifeguards to work. Chickamauga Beach was called Chickamauga because traditionally, fried chicken is included in a picnic lunch for black people. I doubt if you'd ever find any black family or black group on picnic or on holiday who carry lunches without some fried chicken. At the end of the day, they would say that the beach at Missouri Avenue would be covered with chicken bones, leftover chicken bones, you know? And that's how that beach got its name.
Well, I remember, of course, at my time, it was almost over. But I was fortunate enough to be able to go, I think it was 2 or 3 times, but I remember there was a house on Iowa Avenue and it was like a speakeasy. Actually, the era that I'm talking about was like in 47 to 51, 52. And yet, somehow now when I reflect back, it would seem to me it would be the era of the Prohibition days, that type of thing, when you knocked on the door, you know, and they opened it up a crack and let you in if they knew you when you went in and there was some gambling going on. Am I right? Do you remember?
I think the prosecutor will be after you for this one.
Everybody in Atlantic City, I'd say 40% of the people, men in all Atlantic City, either gambled or on horse joints, and everything like that. Atlantic City was the most wide open town. They can talk about Las Vegas and all. But Atlantic City was the most wide open town in the United States at that time.
If you think casinos just came 11 years ago, you're sadly mistaken. Go back into the era of the 30s and 40s, when you had the Bath and Turf, when you had Babette's, the 500 Club. They all had back rooms.
Of course, there was a lot of things going on to keep things that way. But it was real. Atlantic City was the greatest town in the world. The greatest town.
Politics in Atlantic City has had a strange history. Atlantic City basically is a city that over its growth years had a benevolent dictator. By that we mean there was always someone in charge who gave the orders. And that was the person who had their finger in just about every pie. Unfortunately, some of them went astray.
I loved Atlantic City's architecture. I loved the old hotels. It had a very lyrical kind of feeling to the building. The buildings, they were all very Byzantine and Moorish, and they had turrets. And they had great history to them as well. The Marble Blenheim was supervised by Thomas Edison, who invented reinforced concrete that the Blenheim was made out of.
And Edison was on the site when they were building it. He supervised the construction of this portion of the building. I have no idea how long it took to build, but it's obvious that it didn't last too long on the way down.
The decline and the demise of Atlantic City is an interesting topic, and it's been tossed around for many, many years. And it probably started happening already at the time of the Depression. I don't think Atlantic City ever truly recovered from the Depression of the mid-30s.
The change that we saw in Atlantic City was also precipitated by the ease of air travel. Over the preceding 10 or 15 years, it became much more common to jump on an airplane and go to some place for a vacation.
For decades, Atlantic City has called itself the nation's playground. The convention hall has housed many diverse attractions for the amusement of vacationers at the famous resort. Now, however, world focus is on a different type of attraction at Atlantic City, the Democratic National Convention.
In '64, with the Democratic Convention, I operated the elevators at the Ambassador Hotel, which is now the Trop World Casino Hotel. And in that elevator, I had Pierre Salinger to ride and Bobby Kennedy and, of course, all of the '64 Democratic Convention, which was a major event for Atlantic City.
It helped to put another nail into the coffin of Atlantic City's history, because when the reporters all came down at the time that Lyndon Johnson was to be renominated in 1964, there was nothing here. There was no excitement. So what did they do? They looked at Atlantic City. We had hotels that were giving them paper towels in some of our big hotels.
One reporter came down with a with his faucet or something when they were doing a camera story. So all of those things tended to show the city off as a tired old hag. And certainly Atlantic City had its urban renewal plan. One of the things that happened was they took this area from Maryland Avenue and took some 65 acres from here and went clear across the boardwalk and down to Atlantic Avenue and leveled all of the hotels, restaurants, guest houses, and theaters. In a lot of people's mind, this was one of the other major setbacks in Atlantic City.
This is a picture of the old Galen Hall, which was sort of a sanitarium operation. That was in the urban renewal area, and that was demolished.
This whole project was given to one developer who had an option on it. And as interest rates escalated through the middle 60s and as other conditions changed, it became less and less feasible for this developer to rebuild this area. Local residents were infuriated because, in fact, a big chunk of the tax base had been taken away, and of course a big chunk of the city's vitality had been removed and replaced by parking lots that became infested with weeds and with trash.
So Atlantic City was in sort of a declining mode, and the people who had established businesses here felt the impact of it and were looking for changes, looking for ways to boost it up. And there were very many ideas. The one that obviously became the most popular and took hold was that of casino gambling.
I, for one, am very grateful to the casino industry for bringing in the business and giving employment and for all the wonderful things it has done for our city, which was actually dying.
The last 2 summers I've had a chance to work with the casinos. I worked as a cashier at Trump Castle last summer, and this summer I'm working as a cocktail waitress at the Claret, and I know that I could not stand working at a casino year-round for years and years and years. The summer is enough for me, and I just don't see anything else here to really do that I could say I could make a decent living with.
The city was a nice place to raise a kid, but today it's questionable whether the city as a whole is a nice place, because we don't have a community. We have a casino city, and there is no unification of the ethnicity of the town. We're just spread out, and everyone's hustling, but they all got to hustle for a big buck. There's no little stuff here.
There's one group of people who want to make money, and their main objective, their bottom line, is making money. There's another group of folks who say, this is my home, I want to live here, I want to feel comfortable about living here, I want to raise my family here. And everybody has to have some mutual kind of understanding.
Right now, the changes are fine, they're positive, but not necessarily for the city. It seems as though the prosperity is centered around the city and not within the city. That has to change, and I don't know when that's going to come about. I hope it comes within my lifetime.
One of the things that bothers myself and many of the boardwalk merchants most about Atlantic City is the frequent comment that, well, why hasn't the city changed? Why are there still abandoned buildings? Why isn't everybody in Atlantic City a millionaire? Well, the people who come to Atlantic City aren't millionaires, and the people who leave aren't millionaires either.
I think Atlantic City, if it were largely a commercial city, could manage itself much as an adult theme park. If it were to address itself to that image, it could certainly work to rebuild its convention business. It could certainly work to rebuild itself as the playground of the world.
We're supposed to be the #1 rated destination for tourists in the world. Why is the boardwalk not the way it was? Well, it's because nothing's the way it was. Nothing ever comes back to be what it was. It probably isn't really what you remember it to be if you look at it very closely.
One of the problems this city has had over late years is the fact that we have not had the unified government in order to get things done. The state has not helped us, but the people in government have not been able to pull the town together, to pull the various factions together, to be able to develop this city the way it should.
Atlantic City is a resort community, and it will always be that by the nature of its location along the waterfront and the possibilities that we have for the continuance of its development. It also has to have its people, because that entire community in terms of resorts cannot be developed if there are not people here to work and service it.
We should have anticipated there were going to be a great many of changes, but I guess hope beyond hope, we were hoping to get some flavor of the old Atlantic City, and that's just not going to happen.
Atlantic City has always had a history of being like the phoenix that rises from the ashes. Every time it's met with a complication or a disaster, it survives. In the very beginning, in the late 1800s, it was bombarded by mosquitoes. And then later on, fire swept away all the wooden hotels. And then, of course, we had to deal with the Depression in the 30s. And in the 40s, during World War II, all the hotels were taken over by the Army, and Atlantic City was a giant training center. And then in the late 60s, when air travel took people to Florida and Europe, and Atlantic City was hit with a big economic blight, and people used to tease in the late 70s, whoever is the last person out of town, just turn off the light. Then casino referendum was passed. Now Atlantic City is booming again. So Atlantic City always has its, she's a great lady, the queen of the resorts, and she keeps coming back.
In Search of Atlantic City was made possible by subscribers to WHYY TV12.
Wilmington Trust, an independent Delaware bank, is committed to providing quality financial services and to supporting quality public broadcasting. Wilmington Trust is proud to join you in making possible this special TV12 program.
If you have a comment on the program you've just seen, give us a call at 215-923-WHYY and voice your opinion on the TV12 response line. Your comments are important, and we appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us. Call right now at 215-923-WHYY. If it's busy, please call back. We really want to hear from you.
In Colombia, the government says it is fighting cocaine by capturing or killing the drug lords.
They had to kill him. It could have been very inconvenient to capture him alive, because he would have had many things to say about his relation with certain sectors of the armed forces, of the government.
From the U.S. to Medellin, Frontline investigates the politics of the drug trade inside the cartel.
Tonight at 10 on TV12.
Cigna Foundation is proud to support educational programming on TV12. Cigna Foundation is the charitable arm of the Cigna companies, providers of insurance, health care, employee benefits, and financial services to businesses and individuals worldwide.
Foolishness reigns
The crazy man's chasing me with a meat cleaver.
as Damon Runyon's classic characters celebrate a legendary New Year's Eve. Matt Dillon, Jennifer Grey, Rutger Hauer, Madonna, and Randy Quaid star when American Playhouse presents Bloodhounds of Broadway.
Wednesday night at 10 on TV12.
Next time on Nature, we're going to the other side of the Earth, to the world's largest island, Australia, where some of the oddest creatures live. We'll explore how these strange animals live and how they came to be when an extraordinary 6-part journey into the nature of Australia, the island continent, begins.
Thursday at 8 on TV12. You're tuned to TV12 WHYY Wilmington, Philadelphia.